Hotel Brouwer, Mynheer Brouwer. One day that heavy old body will thunk-te-clunk clunk down the narrow spiral of those foot-smoothed hardwood stairs without concern for number or interval. The fragile egg may finally crack on a step shaped and placed by his own hands. If there is an inner remnant, it will hover silent over the apparent catastrophe, inspecting the workmanship for error in the searching way it studies a chess position for weakness under attack. Finding none, it will look up into the face of its opponent and breathe the final hoot with which he accepts responsibility for the move. Hoot is a Dutch word. It's a corrosive explosion. An approximate English meaning for the word is good. An approximate English spelling for the corrosive explosion, very, very approximate, is hoot. Drag the H. Paulus at 12. Mynheer Brouwer, 89, will be 90 the last day of the year. Paulus, the fattest ex-tomcat possible, is said to be 12, and 12 in a cat is said to compare to 84 in human years. Paulus still gathers his strength and his belly for a rather deliberate and sometimes scrambling leap up to the counter where his water dish is kept. He absolutely denies that anyone ever said to him that it was not right for him to be up on the guests' tables, though he does take care not to assert his rights during the hours of breakfast. A mere chess game is not the sort of thing one need bother to walk around. And the fact that you are reading the newspaper he chooses as the proper extra bit of comfort an older person needs at nap time does not keep him from placing his body between you and the print. Paulus at 12. No quick kitten tortured by perception, but not so dull as a mere human. There's a chancy trot or two left in the old gentleman across to the canal on quiet Sunday mornings to see to it that the perch mind their business. The fluent Dutch. One morning Paulus made his stately walk across the hotel bar and dropped heavily to the bench beside me, and immediately dropped again to the floor. As he passed, I said, "Good morning, Paulus. How are you, old fella?" Paulus gave no notice whatsoever. I looked up and said to Gerrit, the concierge, "Paulus doesn't speak English." Dutch people are very proud of their command of languages. Gerrit replied immediately, "Paulus speaks excellent English. He has lived in this hotel all his life, and many Americans come here, but he is not idiomatic." The trees of Amsterdam. Women's styles here have a sense of expensive carelessness, an intentional uncouth. It's a cultivated uncouth that characterizes the city for me. It is an uncouth that can be offended. Here's a storm poem. The trees of Amsterdam bitch disconsolately, bend to their mirrors, lift a jerked curse into the wind, and repair their coiffured disarray. Some British people like to refer to Americans as colonials. Two colonials reflect on difficult times. I spent the late evening talking to a young Dutchman, a too rare occurrence in my life full of tourists. He was raised in Suriname. He was born in 1946. I asked him a question about Dutch vocabulary. One of the verses I translated was an ironic monologue. The poet has a housewife delineate herself in the distorted mirror of condescending remarks made about her neighbors. There was a Dutch term, fout, that made no sense in the context. The Dutch love, even more than other nations, putting a half-twist on common words to give them special meanings. I showed the poem to my friend, and he explained. To have fault meant one thing and one thing only. That person's behavior was less than it should have been during the German occupation. They were not collaborators, but they are forever remembered as persons with a blemish. We talked on about the residual feeling against the Nazi collaborators after more than 40 years. There is a great confusion of feeling about the experience of the war. The Netherlands and Belgium had more collaborators than any of the other European countries, or so my informant told me last evening. But this is explained in part by the fact that theirs was a civilian rather than a military occupation. I do not fully understand the distinction. I assume that uniformed Germans were not always present. The mid-30s man from Suriname did not think much of the Dutch resistance. The French and the Yugoslavs did much more. Even so, he thought that those who freely condemn others as collaborators were usually the worst of all. They were do-nothings. He called them passive collaborators. Neo-Nazis. The neo-Nazis seem to be everywhere. There are newspaper accounts of their activities all over Europe. My Surinamer informant compares the Dutch response to the neo-Nazis unfavorably to that of the Germans. He says that the German youth hound the neo-Nazis wherever they go, battling them without weapons, losing, fighting on. He thinks the famous Dutch tolerance has its problems. I do not know the truth of the matter. I hope that what my friend from Suriname says of the German youth is true. I'm afraid it's only a romantic dream based on a not too accurately remembered heroism from the generation of his younger days. The flower children, those mythic heroes of love, victorious against the iron boot of authority. Plans. This morning I am confident that I will be here till the beginning of next year. Then I will move on to Paris for an extended stay and for language study. But my plans are always foolishness. I really want to get back home and look the people over. Just say hello. The daydream of winter in Africa or Suriname is not dead, but it is not practical. The storm has begun. The leaves fall up. They feed among the wind-starved gulls. Today has been a hard day to get started. But the storm has begun now, so I can go out and enjoy the rain and wind. I was going to do a bunch of running around for sure this afternoon, mailing letters, checking out a yoga class, checking Magic Bus for a flight to Morocco just in case, taking another look at Rembrandt's house. But I spent the day here writing instead. I will attempt to get to the post office. That chore has been put off too long.